Meghan Markle wanted the world to believe she wasn't just leaving the royal family, she was ascending beyond it. Bigger than palace walls, bigger than royal protocol, bigger than centuries of tradition. She wasn't supposed to become another former Duchess fading into celebrity interviews and staged paparazzi walks. No, she was supposed to become a global empire, a billionaire lifestyle queen, a Hollywood mogul, a modern Martha Stewart wrapped in Montecito luxury and whispered empowerment speeches. But somewhere between the private jets, the Netflix cameras, the jam jars, and the podcast microphones, everything started collapsing. Not quietly either, publicly, repeatedly, almost unbelievably. And the most shocking part? Every single disaster seemed to happen right after Meghan told the world she was finally finding her voice. Because before the chaos, before the lawsuits, the failed trademarks, the mocked rebrands, and the shelves full of unsold products, Meghan actually had something real. The TIG, a lifestyle blog people genuinely liked. It wasn't massive, but it was authentic enough to work. Food, travel, beauty, ambition. It had momentum. It had personality. It had a future.
The name The TIG comes from a wine called Tignanello, but oftentimes it's mispronounced Tignanello. And I had a sip of this wine about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was the first time that I understood what people meant when they said the body or legs or structure of wine. It was such an, oh, I get it kind of moment that for me it became a TIG moment. That became my nickname for these ahas.
And then came Prince Harry. Suddenly the TIG disappeared overnight like evidence being wiped from a crime scene. Deleted, gone, finished. Meghan traded her growing brand for a royal title, and for a moment it looked like the greatest trade deal in modern celebrity history. But then something strange happened. The woman who abandoned the TIG spent the next 7 years desperately trying to recreate the exact same thing she threw away. Same aesthetic, same curated lifestyle image, same wellness branding, same elevated authenticity, except now it felt forced, manufactured, like somebody trying to rebuild a house from memory after burning the original down themselves.
And why is Meghan Markle so obsessed with relaunching the TIG? Well, Meghan Markle is a narcissist, I believe, and many other people believe that as well. And if you actually read through the TIG is a very self-obsessed, self-centered blog where Meghan Markle talks about herself a lot, even when she gives people the TIG talk. So she talks to a couple celebrities, most likely their PR assistants, asks them about 6 or 7 inane questions that are very simple, like what would you do with your last $10? What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? Those are the type of questions that she asks on that. She spends the introduction talking about herself and maybe her minimal interaction with this person. So it's very, very much a self-indulgent project, the TIG was. And Meghan Markle, as a narcissist, she loved that, absolutely loved the TIG.
And that desperation became impossible to ignore once Netflix entered the picture. Meghan wasn't just signing deals anymore. She was chasing reinvention after reinvention. First came Pearl, the animated series that was supposed to launch her as some kind of feminist storytelling visionary. But before audiences could even judge it, Netflix quietly killed it behind closed doors.
Pearl Power is a book that I wrote starring a character called Pearl, who is a little feminist. When I saw that Meghan was producing this TV show called Pearl, I contacted a copyright lawyer. My lawyer wrote to Archwell and Netflix. He said in the letter, the similarities between your posed animation series and my client's work appear to be too many and too striking to be mere coincidence. There was no response.
Think about how humiliating that is. Not canceled after release, not rejected by audiences, it never even survived long enough to exist. Like a movie studio spending millions building a giant billboard, then tearing it down before sunrise because nobody believed in the product anymore. And suddenly, people started asking uncomfortable questions. If Meghan had unlimited money, unlimited connections, and the world's media obsessed with her every move, why did nothing stick? Then came Archetypes, the Spotify podcast, the project that was supposed to prove Meghan could dominate audio storytelling the same way royals dominate headlines. Except almost immediately, things started going wrong. Trademark problems, production delays, rumors about staff doing interviews for her, 17 producers involved in creating just 13 hours of content over 3 years. 13 hours for a deal reportedly worth $20 million. And then came the sentence that detonated across Hollywood like a bomb. The fucking grifters. One Spotify executive said it publicly, and suddenly the entire fairy tale cracked. Because once that word entered the conversation, people stopped seeing Meghan and Harry as visionaries. They started seeing them as people constantly selling promises bigger than the results. And still, Meghan kept pushing forward, relentlessly. Like every flop only made her more determined to prove something. That's when American Riviera Orchard arrived, or at least attempted to arrive. A name so overly polished and painfully luxurious that even critics couldn't decide whether it sounded like a vineyard, a spa retreat, or a yacht club menu. But before the first product even launched, trademark offices were already rejecting the paperwork, missing signatures, wrong filings, underpaid fees. It wasn't just embarrassing, it was chaotic. The kind of mistakes people don't expect from somebody with millions of dollars and elite legal teams supposedly working behind the scenes. And then the internet started laughing, because Meghan was standing on empowerment stages talking about female entrepreneurship while simultaneously struggling to legally secure the name of her own company. Worse still, critics started comparing the entire brand to a luxury fantasy designed by somebody trying too hard to look important. But Meghan doubled down anyway. Jam jars, flower sprinkles, candles, rose wine, everything wrapped in expensive branding and carefully filtered Montecito aesthetics. Then came the wine launch, and this is where the story started feeling almost surreal. Meghan launched the rose on Princess Diana's birthday. The backlash exploded instantly. Critics called it tasteless, opportunistic, calculated. But initially, the wine sold out fast, and Meghan's supporters celebrated like she just conquered Silicon Valley. Except 1 month later, the restock happened, and suddenly nobody cared anymore. The same product that supposedly vanished in minutes sat untouched online for days. That's when people realized something dangerous for any celebrity brand. Hype can create a first purchase, but only quality creates a second one. And then came the most unbelievable twist yet. A billion-dollar company called Harry and David stepped in to block her trademark efforts. Harry and David. You genuinely could not script something more humiliating. Meghan leaves the royal family with Prince Harry, only for a company literally named Harry and David to legally shut down part of her empire dreams. It felt symbolic, like reality itself was mocking the entire operation. What happened next made the entire situation spiral from messy into completely absurd, because instead of slowing down after the trademark disasters and failed launches, Meghan suddenly announced a total rebrand. American Riviera Orchard was gone almost as quickly as it arrived. After spending months building hype around the name, the logos, the aesthetic, the expensive Montecito fantasy, she scrapped it and replaced it with something called As Ever. And the timing was unbelievable. Just weeks before launch. Imagine building a mansion for over a year and then changing the address while guests are already driving there. That's how chaotic it looked. But somehow it got even worse, because Meghan apparently hadn't checked properly if the new name already existed either. A small New York clothing company had already been operating under the name As Ever for years. Suddenly, a tiny independent business owner found himself staring at the full force of a Netflix-backed celebrity empire moving directly toward his brand name like a bulldozer in slow motion. And online, people were furious, because this wasn't looking like empowerment anymore. It looked like power swallowing smaller people whole. And just when Meghan probably thought the embarrassment couldn't get any worse, the logo scandal exploded. A mayor from a tiny town in Mallorca, Spain, looked at Meghan's brand logo and nearly fell out of her chair, because the symbol looked shockingly similar to the town's historic coat of arms dating back hundreds of years. Suddenly, newspapers everywhere were running side-by-side comparisons. A centuries-old Spanish emblem beside Meghan's sleek California lifestyle logo, and the similarities were impossible to ignore. The internet lost its mind. Again, critics accused her team of copying. Defenders called it coincidence. But the damage was already done. That's the thing about branding disasters. Even if they aren't intentional, they create a feeling, a pattern. And once audiences begin spotting patterns, every mistake suddenly looks suspicious. Every silence feels calculated. Every explanation feels rehearsed. Meghan wasn't just fighting critics anymore, she was fighting exhaustion. People were getting tired of the endless reinventions, tired of launches that collapsed, tired of hype leading nowhere. Then came this sellout controversy. Products supposedly vanished within minutes. Jam jars gone instantly, candles gone instantly, flower sprinkles disappearing like concert tickets. Meghan's supporters celebrated online as if she'd built the next billion-dollar luxury company overnight. Except there was one massive problem. Nothing restocked. Not for months, which made absolutely no sense, because successful brands restock immediately. That's business. Demand goes up, inventory goes up. But Meghan's company suddenly started talking about gathering data and evaluating the brand direction. Translation? Nobody knew what was happening. Maybe not even Meghan herself. And that confusion infected everything around the brand, including the Netflix show. With love, Meghan was supposed to tie the whole empire together. This was the master plan. Netflix visibility plus lifestyle branding plus curated domestic professionals perfection equals unstoppable success, at least in theory. But audiences watched the show and immediately started mocking it. The infamous put Chinese takeout on a plate moment became a symbol of the entire problem because people expected expertise, sophistication, something aspirational. Instead, they got basic advice wrapped in expensive cinematography. Worse still, Netflix itself didn't even seem confident in the brand anymore. When the company opened major retail spaces featuring hit franchises like Stranger Things and Squid Game, Meghan's products were nowhere to be found. No jam, no candles, nothing. That silence screamed louder than any public statement ever could. Because if your own streaming partner refuses to showcase your products inside their flagship retail experience, what does that say about how much faith they actually have in you? And then came the website glitch, the moment that completely shattered the illusion. Reddit users discovered they could manipulate the shopping cart system to estimate inventory levels. Suddenly, people realized the products weren't rare at all. Massive quantities were sitting unsold behind the scenes. Warehouses full of stock, millions of dollars worth. Jam nobody wanted. Candles nobody reordered. Flour sprinkles sitting untouched while Instagram stories desperately pushed engagement. The scarcity strategy started looking less like genius marketing and more like panic disguised as exclusivity. Then the reports became even more humiliating. According to insiders, Netflix employees were literally taking Meghan's products home for free because there was so much unsold inventory sitting around. Think about that image for a second. A woman who once stood on palace balconies representing the British monarchy now reduced to boxes of free jam being handed out in office hallways because nobody else wanted them. That isn't reinvention, that's collapse happening in slow motion. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared people for the bath salts controversy, because suddenly the conversation stopped being about bad branding and started becoming genuinely dangerous. Meghan demonstrated a homemade bath salts recipe on her Netflix series, casually mixing ingredients together while talking about hospitality and self-care. No measurements, no serious warnings, just vibes, aesthetics, and trust me. Then a woman allegedly followed the recipe and later claimed she suffered severe burns and injuries afterward. Lawsuit threats exploded immediately. Headlines went nuclear, and Meghan's legal response only made the situation colder, clinical, detached. Lawyers argued there was no special relationship creating a duty of care. Think about how brutal that sounded after years of branding herself as authentic, compassionate, relatable Meghan. The same woman who constantly spoke about connection and community suddenly had legal teams arguing she owed nothing to somebody who trusted her advice. That contradiction hit hard, maybe harder than any previous scandal because it cut directly into the image she'd spent years building. By this point, the Netflix deal itself was hanging by a thread, and behind the scenes, insiders were already whispering the obvious question nobody wanted to say publicly: what exactly had Meghan actually built? Not promised, not announced, built. The answer was uncomfortable. The TIG was gone. Pearl vanished before launch. Archetypes collapsed. American Riviera Orchard failed. As ever became controversy after controversy. The Netflix show couldn't move products, retailers reportedly weren't interested, and the audience fatigue was becoming impossible to reverse. Then came the final humiliation. Reports exploded claiming Netflix was quietly distancing itself from Meghan entirely. Extra episodes repackaged as a season 2. Weak viewing numbers. Products allegedly shipped back, no massive renewals. No triumphant empire launch. Just silence. Slow, corporate silence. The kind that feels polite until you realize it's actually rejection. And maybe that's the strangest part of this entire story. Meghan Markle had everything people dream about. Fame, money, access, media obsession, billion-dollar connections. Yet somehow every reinvention collapsed under the weight of its own hype. Every launch felt bigger than the product itself. Every promise sounded larger than reality could support. And after 7 years of trying to become the ultimate lifestyle mogul, what remained? Warehouses of unsold products, rebrands nobody asked for, streaming deals that faded quietly into the background, and a public image caught somewhere between royalty, influencer culture, and endless damage control.